freedom of religion should be abolished. Freedom of religion, not the concept of freedom of religion, but the actual legal entity, freedom of religion. So right now it's a distinct legal concept. It's in the U.S. Constitution. It's in the First Amendment, freedom of religion. It's also in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's in a lot of secular, pluralistic, or secular countries. It's part of their constitutions. So the thing is, do we really need it? Is it superfluous? Is it something that isn't it kind of redundant? Because we have freedom of speech, we have freedom of assembly, you have freedom of association, freedom of thought. Doesn't it already cover freedom of religion? And if so, why are we carving out a special case for freedom of religion? We're going to make the argument here that that privileges religion, and it shouldn't. There's no reason to privilege one idea over another when we've got freedom of expression for all ideas. I think freedom of religion is completely covered by all of these things. So, Armin, do you have any starting thoughts on it?
No, I think you already changed my mind on this, because I originally, when you said this, I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like, we're on the side of freedom of like. But as soon as you explained it, I was like, "Oh crap! I never thought about it like that." And I think like immediately you changed my mind on this, which is very interesting. I never thought about it this way. Like, yeah, why is this separate? Like, as somebody that has been so anti-religion, I'm surprised that I never thought, like, what if we have a special case for religion compared to all other ideas? Why don't we have like the freedom to express your love for knitting as a special?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't have that. Like, why is it this specific group of why? We're
Exactly.
saying all ideas should be, you should be able to express them freely, and you have that already covered: freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, all the. But then we have like a special case for religion. Like, why is it that this group of ideas that has something to do with being having connected to divinity, or like, why are they special? Like, why are not some other group of, why don't we have a special case for like political ideas, right? Why don't we have that, right? Or medical, like, oh, freedom of expression of your views on medicine, or freedom of expression on your views on the TV shows that you like. We don't have special categories for that. We're just like, hey, freedom of expression of ideas, like freedom of conscience as a whole. And especially given that it just seems like this is too much this is the government endorsing a certain other ideas, like, hey, we know we have freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, but these ideas are so special that we need to emphasize it double free compared to otherwise.
Yeah.
And to me, that's actually, now that I think about it, that's basically the government um, giving legitimacy to divine authority, because this is like they're
Well,
giving
giving
this a sort of
preference. It's actually
preference. Yeah,
saying freedom of religion. You should be freer to express your religious views than you should be
this is
free
an
to other things. Like it's
yeah, this is an animal farm thing. All animals are equal, but some are more equal. This is
more equal than
basically
others.
saying, then this is basically saying all ideas are free, but some are more free. That's
Yeah.
basically it.
Another.
They're gonna say more. Okay, so but the counter argument to all of this could be that
What's the
the
harm?
reason, yeah, what's the harm? Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
actually, I was thinking of something else, but let's focus on that first. The second one is that um, that religion were specifically a greater target
Yeah.
compared to other ideas, like religious persecution. When it comes to authoritative government going after ideas, religious persecution needs to be highlighted more, because that was, whether it's Catholics going after Protestants, whether
That's
it's
right.
Shias going after Sunnis, or Sunnis going after Shias, when it going after the Jews or whatever. These ideas, the religious ideas, have been specifically used as a way to target people more than other ideas, and that's why that it needs to be a special case.
So
Both of these comebacks, what's the harm? And also, this does deserve to be a special case. What do you think? What are your
so
responses to both of these?
so let's start with the second one first, right? the idea that, where did this idea come from? Why is freedom of religion enshrined in all of these different constitutions? And that's exactly where it comes from. So I would refer, and we're going to put a link to this because, when I started talking about this, and I actually first started thinking about this when we were talking about circumcision. How people, if I say, I want to cut off my child's ear, the outside of their ear, they can still hear. It's not an issue. It's harmless because, I want to prevent some kind of disease of the ear or whatever, right? If I say that, then I'll get thrown in jail and my child will be taken away from me. But if I want to cut off the end of a functional organ, a functional reproductive and excretory organ from my child, then it's my religious freedom. So that's a way in which that's how I started thinking about it. And then I was actually Leon Korteweg, right, our friend. He pointed me to an article by Martin Baudry. Martin Baudry is actually also a friend of mine. He's in Belgium. He's a philosopher. And he wrote an excellent article called Abolish the Freedom of Religion. Right? And over there, he actually talks about why this relic of freedom of religion, why it ended up being in these constitutions. And it's exactly because of what you said, Armin. It's because these religious groups were persecuted. Now, the thing is, they were persecuted by other religious groups, right? Protestants, Catholics, Shia, Sunnis, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Jews. It was in the vast majority of cases, right? It was persecution against these religious minorities by religious majorities. And that's why it actually came, the freedom of religion. It became a hallmark of secularism. But the problem with that is that it still privileges a religious ideas more than anything else. Again, if you have like the U.S. First Amendment and you have those freedoms, the freedom of speech, thought, expression, association, assembly, if you have all of that and press, then that protects the rights of those minorities anyway, right? Because they are free to express their views and they're free to practice their religion under those broad principles. So it shouldn't, it's still, you can still say that it doesn't apply. You still don't need freedom of religion, right? The second argument is, what's the harm? Okay, supposing, we've got these things anyway, you add freedom of religion to it, you talk about it separately, what's the big deal? What harm will it cause? Well, the circumcision thing is one example, right? Another example that Martin gave in his article is that in some European countries, when you stun animals for slaughter, right? That's the humane way to do it. When Jews and Muslims, when they insist on slaughtering animals without stunning, which is a much more torturous and painful process, right? They are allowed to do that because it's their religious freedom, under religious freedom. But if you do it aside from that, if you say it's not because of my religion, you just do it anyway for secular reasons, you're going to get penalized for it. It's illegal. So it actually does what you're saying, that this freedom is freer, that this is more free than the other freedoms. That comes into play immediately, right?
So I think the argument that I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the religious freedom is usually used successfully so by many people, not for freedom of expression, but for religious privilege.
That's right. It's used as a way to discriminate. There's a very recent example of this, okay, that happened in the U.S. So as you know, Amy Coney Barrett is a new nominee for the Supreme Court by Donald Trump, and she's a sort of she wants to build the kingdom of God, and she's essentially a religious nut job. So when I forgot my train of thought. I was going to say something. Yeah. So what happened is that recently, once this nomination came up, two other Supreme Court justices in the U.S., that's Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, right? Both of them put out a statement saying that the ruling that allowed same-sex marriage in all of the U.S., right? Paraphrasing, it essentially needs to be reconsidered. It's unconstitutional because it impinges on the religious freedom of people. It's against religious liberty, which is a right given to Americans in the First Amendment. So, and right now they're very boldly making that case because currently the U.S. Supreme Court as of Monday, when she is confirmed, they will have votes to overturn, right, the legalization of same-sex marriage. Whether they do it or not, I don't know, but they will have the votes to overturn it. And they're kind of setting this argument up. It should be overturned because it impinges on religious liberty. And that's what the problem is. When you can invoke religious freedom as a way to sort of supersede or overrun the freedom of, say, same-sex couples to have the same marriage rights as anybody else, that's when it becomes a problem. So it's not just harmless. It's not just a redundancy where, okay, we're just repeating the same thing twice. It's not. It's actually, when you make a special case for it, it gives you an excuse to use that to justify bigotry and discrimination against other groups.
Yeah, so if you have two separate, if you have one category and we just say freedom of expression or freedom of conscience or whatever, if you just have it under one category, then it's so obvious that because it's all under one umbrella, we're not encouraging your freedom to violate other people's freedom, right?
Yeah.
It only, if you put it into two different categories, all of a sudden it becomes a competition of two different set of ideas, or so two different, set of rights that people have. Like, it's now two different rights competing with each other, right? So you have other people's freedoms, and then because you have freedom of religion, you're like, oh, you have these freedoms, but because of my freedom of religion, now my freedom is now competing with your freedom. My right to express my religion is now competing with your right to, I don't know, marry whoever you love, or to have this store, to open this, to express yourself over here, becomes a competition. But if you move them all under the same category, it becomes more apparent and more obvious and less easy for people to say, well, my right gets to violate your right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be much more difficult for people to make that case, because it will be more obviously self-contradictory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I that's exactly what the issue is, and this is a problem with just overall. Look, pretty much anything today that is non-religious that allows discrimination, where you can discriminate, like the KKK discriminates against Black people and Jews. There's other groups that discriminate against women. All of those are called out. If you are a secular shop and you don't serve women or you don't serve gay people, then everybody is going to descend on you like a ton of bricks. You may even be liable to, you may be susceptible to legal action as well for discrimination. But religion, when people hold on to religion is the only thing in the world right now that is respected and revered by people, that is thought of as a virtue. Faith, my religious faith, is a virtue that's thought of as a virtue that allows and endorses a discrimination against women, against gay people, against Blacks with their support of slavery and the endorsement of slavery in the Bible and the Quran, against pretty much everybody, against Jews, right? In the Quran especially, right? You see that all the time. So it endorses it, and it's still alive. And as long as you keep it alive, as long as you keep these major religions alive, and you have this freedom of religion, you're always going to have a legal and constitutional basis to find a way to discriminate against these groups.